Just kidding. Was I going to share the right screen? Yes. Right.
What other screen with a chair?
I don't know. All right. Recording. Finally. Finally, we're
All right.
doing this. 10 Cent Menu Club presents 10 pillars of a more profitable menu.
Right. This is the 10 rules that we live by
Yes,
for designing an optimized menu for your restaurant.
that's right.
We're going to go through one by one and show you what we're all about.
Yeah, as thorough as we can be. So first things first, before we can optimize a menu, we need to put everything into context first. So what we suggest is for restaurant owners to know their numbers so that it can inform the design. So there's a few ways to do this. We're going to keep it pretty simple. First things first is you need to choose a time period to analyze. So for restaurants who update their menu based on season, that would be a good time frame to choose. Every season when you go to update your menu, you take a look at your food costs. For restaurants that don't update as frequently, you don't have to do it every season, but at least annually, just to make sure that your cost of ingredients and everything doesn't go up too much. If it does, that's when you take note of it and reevaluate your items. So next would be costing the items on your menu. So this information usually is available on whatever POS you would be using, but you can also calculate it manually. It does take a little bit of time, but in the long run, it's worth the time investment. So you would basically just list the ingredients used in your dish, how much of that ingredient is used and how much that costs for each item. And that include everything down to seasonings and garnish. And then the price, so the sales price minus the food cost per serving is your contribution margin or your profit on each dish.
Yeah, I think before you even engage with a designer, you want to come to that conversation prepared and know these numbers. Otherwise, your designer is going to be putting together the strategy for your business and they don't know. They have no idea what the profitability is of your items. What are your best sellers? What are the things that are going to bring people back and make them tell their friends? So a lot of times we run into restaurants that have, never seen eye to eye with their designer, and the designer just hasn't really gotten it. And this is one of the reasons why is the designer doesn't really understand what the business function of the menu is.
Right, exactly. So then once you figure out the contribution margin for each of your menu items, you can start to organize them based on profitability and popularity. So there's typically 4 categories where we would place these items. First one would be diamonds or stars. These are the dishes on your menu that are the most profitable and they're the top selling items on the menu. Next would be pawns, which are low profitability, but high popularity. So you don't necessarily want to get rid of these items because they are so popular, but they're not as profitable as the diamonds on your menu. The next would be puzzles. These are items that are high in profit, but low in popularity for some reason. So this could be due to maybe the placement of the item, or they're not being, sold those dishes, or they're just not in a prominent place. Maybe it's the way that the item is described on the menu. It doesn't sound as appealing. So there's certain ways that you can tweak the puzzles to turn them into diamonds so that they become more popular. And then the last one would be lemons, which are low profitability and low popularity. These are the dishes that you may want to consider removing from your menu, or maybe adjusting the ingredient list to make them more profitable or more popular. Okay, so let's get started. Number one, first thing to do is to determine your menu categories. This is where you basically create an outline of each section on your menu. You group similar items together to make it easier for the customer to navigate. So I'm going to pull up an example here. This is just a basic menu that was given to us before we had the chance to redesign it. There's about 13 or 14 snacks and small plates in this list. They're all kind of, mixed up within each other. Now, we don't, when designing a menu and putting things into categories, you try to stick to not having too many items in any particular category, because it can become overwhelming for a customer. A good rule of thumb is to stick to maybe 7 or 8 per section. So instead of, cutting things off of your menu, a good way to kind of work around that is to group certain items within your existing categories and maybe breaking them out into their own separate category. So for this example, what we did was we found that there were, 3 different types of tacos in this, small plates list. There were also a couple different kinds of quesadillas. There were some fries, some things that maybe would be classified as not an appetizer, but maybe a side. So what we did was we broke these out, and when we redesigned the menu, we broke them out into their own separate categories to make it easier for the customer to navigate through these small plates. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I think this is often overlooked by people, especially with like Italian restaurants. We see this a lot where they have a lot of entrees, and so maybe the entrees is 20 items, but maybe you can compartmentalize those into like a land and sea, or like an antipasta and something else. So finding ways to create subcategories within the traditional categories is going to help the customer navigate to what they're in the mood for, and they'll be less overwhelmed by the menu.
Right, exactly. Sorry.
Well,
Next is second pillar on this list is to emphasize for profit. So highlight the menu items that you want to sell the most. These are dishes that are most popular with customers and also highly profitable for your restaurant. So I'll pull up a couple examples here. There are different ways that you can do this to, make specific items stand out. You put like a symbol near it, like maybe take an element from the logo or some sort of branded icon to indicate that those are top selling items, maybe a star. You could also, put items in a box to just make the customer's eye gravitate towards that area and have it stand out. Or using other sorts of graphics that are graphic elements that just draw the eye to the item that you want to sell, because it brings in the most profit for your restaurant. So those are emphasizing specific dishes for profit. You can also emphasize sections for profit. Maybe if a section typically gets lost on your menu, people don't order from it enough, but it could add value to the check. Put that in a box, put some sort of graphic element near that section, just to make that area stand out and to draw people's eye to it.
Yeah, I think like I was just talking to someone who had like a very basic chicken wings, chicken tender type of menu. And they had chicken tenders, and then they had like fries, and then they had a combo, so like making combos and platters, and then highlighting those. So instead of getting chicken tenders, now you're getting the chicken tender platter with the fries. And instead of spending $12, now you're spending $19. And you're able to create more profitability within the menu by highlighting the combo platter and consulting the customer to that item.
Right, exactly. And you also don't want to overdo it with the amount of graphics or the amount of standout items on the menu, because then it just becomes cluttered, becomes more overwhelming, and then it just leads to the customer not being able to make a decision because there's too many items that are standing out. No one thing really speaks to them. Yep. All right, number 3, label to sell. So the way that a restaurant menu item is named can guide the buying decision for that particular dish. So I'll pull up some examples, but before we even get started on that, there's different ways to label these items, and they're based on, specific ways that the customer interprets that item. So for example, triggering the senses, using more appealing or enticing language on the item name, branded items, what was it, Jack Daniel's barbecue sauce, could be more appealing to a customer, especially if they're familiar with the brand, or it brings more quality or value to that item, or using nostalgic names, that could bring a sense of memory or happiness, or some sort of that feeling to the customer when they're ordering that dish. So in terms of triggering the senses, so if you take a standard mac and cheese, for example, and rename it, truffle infused mac and cheese, sounds more appealing. Or take a pound cake versus bourbon butter pound cake. So those are sensory ways to label the dish. Using location to suggest quality. So, fried chicken sandwich as opposed to Nashville crispy chicken sandwich, brings more to the imagination and gives people a better idea of what that dish is. Beef sliders versus Japanese Wagyu beef sliders. So that, again, that kind of shows the type of beef, the quality of the beef, the type, and it adds the quality to the item. Pique curiosity using nostalgia and signature names. So example of a nostalgic name would be from going spaghetti and meatballs to Nono's famous meatballs. It's always a good one. Lobster ravioli versus Chef Special lobster ravioli. This is more of like a signature name. Adding that Chef Special or signature wording makes people think that it's something that is a specialty of the kitchen and of the restaurant. So people might be gravitated to order it because it makes that dish stand out at your restaurant, as opposed to if they were order it somewhere else. And then incorporating symbols to indicate diet or custom. This is a little bit more appealing to a broader audience with people's dietary restrictions or their religious customs. They usually gravitate towards ordering specific types of items. So, having something listed as gluten-free burrata might not sound as appealing as if it's listed as local burrata with a little gluten-free symbol next to it. Or vegan green salad versus organic field greens with a leaf next to it. That should be a leaf. And then you'd want to include the key on the menu. So if you have several items that are vegetarian or gluten-free or, prepared a certain way, you add that little icon, and it actually, when a customer is looking at the menu on a whole, they can automatically see right away within the first 90 seconds of looking at the menu that you're offering dishes that cater to their specific custom or dietary restriction. Anything to add? So moving on from labeling the dish, now we're talking about the description of each individual item. So feeding the imagination. The way a dish is described on a menu can have a significant impact on sales. Do you want to add anything before I get started? So a prior example could be a chicken sandwich with lettuce, tomato, and mayo on a brioche bun versus a rewritten description, something to the effect of marinated grilled chicken, crisp lettuce, ripe tomato, and creamy mayo on a buttery brioche bun. adding those enticing adjectives to the description kind of, it entices the appetite. It makes people more prone to order that dish, because now they're able to visualize it due to those sensory adjectives that you're including into the description. Another example, Caesar salad with romaine lettuce, croutons, and Caesar dressing versus crispy romaine lettuce, crunchy house-made croutons tossed in a lemon garlic Caesar dressing, sprinkled with freshly grated Parmesan. So that, definitely sounds a little bit more appealing. You have a better picture in your mind about the type of dish that it is. So the last example here, grilled salmon served with mushroom risotto and vegetables versus tender, flaky, wild-caught salmon fillet served with creamy mushroom risotto and a colorful medley of steamed seasonal vegetables. So adding a little bit more oomph to the description could help sell particular items and make them stand out on the menu.
Yeah, and I think like having these detailed descriptions that are mouthwatering also makes it like, wow, I want to come back here and I want to try that next time. So, you want to use that real estate to really tell the story of what's in that dish and try to get them to create an experience, or the idea of an experience of what this is going to be like. I also think that, like, when it comes to designing a menu and fitting the information onto like the printed menu, like this is where a designer can really help you, because you might run out of space if you're just doing it on a Word document, and you don't want to sacrifice that real estate because you're not a professional designer who's able to fit that information inside of the real estate on the menu. So an investment in a graphic designer to be able to fit that information will make these items stand out and make them more mouthwatering.
Right. You don't have to sacrifice cutting down your description or cutting down your, the way that you're listing your ingredients, because you run out of room on the page. So I will try this. Downplay pricing, the next one, number 5. So as we all know, paying for a meal is the biggest pain point when dining out. So using techniques to take the emphasis away from the price can lead to a more positive interaction with the menu, a more positive experience of dining out. People are if the price isn't so emphasized, people might order something that they wouldn't order before if, maybe it was a couple dollars more and it's the same, the same size as the dish name, that all they're looking at is the price. We're not trying to fool anybody. We have to list the price, obviously, but in terms of increasing the enjoyability of dining out for the customer, try to guide them towards the things that they want to know, which is the dish name, the dish description. The last thing they want to know about is the price. So
yeah, I mean, like we're talking about in the last bullet point about how to describe these items and descriptions by using mouth-watering terminology. And there's nothing less mouth-watering than price. So if that price is prominent on the item in the description, people are going to look at the $25 chicken Parmesan when they should be looking at the pan-seared, chicken Parmesan with, grandma's sauce. Like, so you want to downplay the pricing because otherwise they're going to look at it like a price sheet, and you don't want them looking at your menu like it's a price sheet.
Right. Yeah. The most important thing on your menu are the dishes that you're trying to sell. You have to list the price, but it doesn't have to be as prominent. And there are ways to kind of incorporate the pricing that makes it a little bit easier for the user to digest. So an example of, this is before we redesign the menu. So, the tabbed alignment with the dots leading to the price, it draws your eyes directly to the price. You have the name of the item, goes to the price. You're not even reading the description at this point. You're just looking at the name and the price first and foremost. The fact that the price is the same font, weight, color as the name of the item doesn't help. The description is actually a lighter color, so it's the least emphasized of the 3 components of each dish. So what we did when we redesigned this was we you know, we kept the label, the item name emphasized the most in black on white, high contrast, and then the description is also in black right underneath. The price is still on the same line as the menu item, but it's a little bit of a lighter color. It's a little bit of a smaller font. So the weight is a little thinner. So, I mean, it's there and customers see it, but it's not so in your face. Now the dish really stands out and is emphasized more than what they're going to be paying for it, which is what we want. Another cool technique that some restaurateurs do is they would actually put the price after the description, or they would remove the dollar sign, maybe remove the cent. So having something listed as $8.55, you know, yeah, okay, like $8.55 versus $9, $8.55 is cheaper, but having the $9 as like a flat number might actually be more appealing, because it's not, now they're not trying to like nickel and dime each dish and do any type of extra math in their head that's unnecessary. So it's also probably a savvy technique to increase your profit on each item in a way that is just more user-friendly.
Yeah, and you don't want people like spending too much bandwidth on price. So $8.55, and that's $4.35. Why isn't that $4.55? Like, so 8, 8, 5, 9, 4, and they move on to the next thing. So this specific client wanted to have the cents, so that was fine. But just things to keep in mind, like, you know, we only have a certain amount of time that these people are going to look at the menu. We don't want them spending time trying to figure out discrepancies between the pricing and just fixating on pricing. We want them fixated on descriptions that are going to make their mouth water and make a better experience.
Exactly. Okay, so next is using images to enhance the menu. Including visual elements on the menu can help make the design more engaging to the customers. So there's not every menu needs visual elements or images. Most actually probably do better without it, just kind of leaving the clean, simplistic design and using fonts and maybe a little bit of color. But there are some cases where, you know, the subtle use of images actually draws people's attention to certain sections, certain areas of the page when done correctly and not overusing that technique. So a couple of good examples. One would be using an illustration of an item ingredient rather than taking, you know, either a stock photo or trying to get an illustration of the exact dish. The reason for that is because there's a lot of misrepresentation there. If you try to find a stock image of the actual dish that you're serving, it's probably not going to look like what you are actually giving the customer. So there's that falseness that doesn't translate well for the customer experience. But using an illustration of an ingredient that's used, this is for pasta night. So, you know, we have some bow tie pasta and some penne, you know, those are ingredients that are used in the dish, but we're not trying to create the whole piece, the whole finished dish. We're just showing enough to entice the appetite, but not too much to, you know, for false advertising.
Yeah, and even if you do have a picture of the gnocchi pesto as it comes out of the kitchen and you put it on this menu, you know, first of all, is it going to really go with the vibe, or is it going to clash? And second of all, you've now revealed what that dish looks like, and people are more likely to say, I don't know, I mean, I guess what else is there? You know, if that's what that looks like, what else is there? Where with these visual elements, it's just making it more like you're more curious. You're wondering what the rigatoni is going to look like. I mean, like that's what's going to sell it and make people want to get it, right, so they can see what it looks like. Right.
You're allowing the customer to use their imagination to compose the entire dish rather than giving it to them right off the bat. And here's another, these are another couple of, you know, just loosely framed illustrations, barbecue, you know, there's like a picture of a cow. a bagel, nobody's expecting the bagel to come out looking exactly like that. But it kind of gives a little bit of extra. And even when looking at the menu, it immediately people will, for this, the bagels, okay, that's where the bagels are. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So it guides people to a section without them actually having to read in a subconscious way, because they're looking for these little visual cues that tell them, okay, that's the section for bagels, that's the section for pasta, whatever it is. And then if you are going to use photography, make sure that it's professional level, that the lighting is good, that the resolution is high, that it's as appetizing of a dish. So there's color, there's good contrast, to make it mouth-watering, to make it appealing. So some restaurants that do this really well are like salad places, or like very green, fresh bowls that use like fruit and vegetables, because those ingredients are very vibrant, and they're really good at giving people the visual interest to want to order those items.
Yeah, I think you want to try to think about how images are going to play on the menu with regards to your brand. Like a salad place, I feel like photos are more appropriate than maybe like a fine dining French cuisine, where it could almost seem tacky.
Right.
So it can enhance the brand, or it can clash with the brand, and I think that's something to consider.
Definitely. So choosing the right fonts. Font selection is important because it can impact, well, it definitely does impact the readability and the overall aesthetics of the menu. So choosing the fonts is crucial for menu design. I've seen a lot of menus where the fonts for the menu items are almost impossible to read, because whoever designed the menu wanted to get a little creative with, if you're going to get creative with fonts, leave it for the text that isn't trying to sell the dish that you're promoting in the restaurant. Leave it for maybe the section headings, or extra, not the actual substance of the menu itself. So the menu item, the description, and the price should be readable.
Yeah, I think nothing's going to piss people off more than not being able to read the menu, especially people with like tough bad eyesight. They're not going to be able to see. And I've been at restaurants that are like low lit, and they pick up like their phone, and they like have the flashlight on the menu, and like they're not having a great experience if they have to do that.
Right. Yeah, it needs to be readable. And it also, so the way that the types that you type, the fonts that you choose also kind of represent the type of dining experience that people are expecting to have. So for example, using a serif font. So this is an example of a serif font. You would look at this and assume this is a little bit more of an upscale type of place. Just the way that the items are listed and written. And then using a little bit of a more rigid font. This is a serif or a sans font for the description. This is, if I would look at this menu, I would think it's more of a bar and grill or sports bar. And then, choosing something like this, a little bit more playful, definitely fast casual, takeout type of vibe there. And then, so again, saving the stylized fonts for section headings. When you want to get fun with it, which I do like to do, because it definitely adds more visual interest to the menu, but leave it for the section headings. It's a great technique to also break up the different sections and give each one its own space on the menu. So increasing the engagement for the customer with the menu. And then lastly, one technique that we use to save some space on the menu is for when there's a menu item that has a more lengthy name, using a condensed font is a good option for that, because it kind of, it keeps it's still very readable, but it doesn't take up as much real estate on the menu page.
Yeah, and I think a condensed font that's readable is key if you have long descriptions and a lot of things on your menu, because you can tuck those words in to a smaller space without sacrificing readability.
Right.
And that's, sometimes what people do is they'll just make the font smaller to make it fit, and then no one can read it,
Mhm.
or they have it just keep going and going and going, and it's breaking the menu, and it all looks, weird.
Right, exactly. So. Okay. Color contrast. So using proper contrast is necessary also to ensure legibility. It can be used to create visual interest and draw attention to particular elements on the page. So by color contrast, it's the very basic of it is, very dark font with a light background, or a very light or white font with a dark background. But I always advise, don't get too creative with using color on color, because you don't know how it's going to print, number one. And I've seen it hundreds of times where the contrast is just not there, which means that once the menu is printed and you put them on the tables in the restaurant, it's almost impossible to read. So if you have, let's say a yellow font on a blue background, right there. A yellow font on an orange background, for example, that would be very difficult to read because there's not enough contrast between the two colors. It has to be a certain percentage of darkness with a certain percentage of lightness so that the text that's on top will pop and be readable.
Yeah, and look at like magazines and newspapers, like, a full color magazine might have images and photos and graphics and all different things. But when you're reading that article, it's usually black font over white, or vice versa, white font over black.
Mhm.
They don't really try to go too crazy because they want it to be readable and not strain the reader's eyes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And when you have a white background, you can get a little bit more creative with the colors, as long as obviously it's dark enough of in vibrancy. But if you are printing on a colored stock, even be very careful. I would just stick to black, or as close to black as you can get with that. So here's an example of a client that we have that has a very dark gray black background, and the text, all of the menu items are in white because that ensures readability. The section headings are in a color, which is fine. It still pops, but it's not straining the eyes because it's just the one word. It's denoting the section that you're looking at. And then ways to use color to draw your eye to specific sections of a menu, putting it in a colored box and then inverting the type, white on a dark blue or white on a darkish red, is a great way to create visual interest, draw the eye, or even whole sections. If you are using a colored background, depending if it's a light enough color, then go with black. But if it's a little bit of a darker color, then white would be the best option. I think a lot of the time a good idea would be to, if you're not sure, print a sample out and see. If it's hard, pass them out, show your friends, make sure that everybody can easily read it. Otherwise, maybe, then you can start tweaking the colors and, playing around with that.
Yeah, and this particular sample here is black on green, and you might think, well, that's not as much contrast as black over white, but the restaurant itself was very well lit.
Yeah.
So that's usually a question that we ask as well, is like, how is it lit? Is it a dark pub, or is it like a well-lit cafeteria style, and that's what this was. It was like
Right.
a well-lit taco joint. So you can be a little bit more flexible, utilize colors, but if that was a very, very dark restaurant, this might not have worked.
Right.
But it was fine because it was well lit.
Right. Yeah, and even this is a little bit close, but we did print a few samples before we sent the job out. So to just ensure that it was a readable. Okay, decoy dishes. You want to get into this one?
Sure. So decoy dishes are an interesting way to contextualize the items on the menu. And a decoy dish is basically a high-priced item next to a lower selling item, or a high-priced item that's doesn't really fit with the rest of the items on the menu. And what it does is it makes the other items look more reasonable because, you know, this item is so expensive. So this is an example of two types of steaks. They're both 8-ounce steaks. One is 32, the other is 27. Unless it's your birthday or a big anniversary, you might say, well, let me just get the flat iron steak for 27. You know, that's not as expensive as the marinated 8-ounce skirt steak.
Mhm. Yeah, and this is next.
Good.
This is another example of, I mean, they're not similar dishes, but because the first item is priced so high compared to the second and even the third item on that list, you might be like, okay, well, there's the highest price dish in this section, and then look below that, and then it draws your eye to what is below, and maybe that would be where you kind of gravitate to order from, because you know, oh, you're saving a couple bucks. You know, obviously it depends on taste and what you're out, how you're looking to celebrate whatever you're going out to do, but.
Different decoy dishes. One more thing about decoy dishes. It's very interesting to utilize them for catering menus when you have catering packages. We like to do like 3 different packages and have the middle package be the most attractive. You know, so we work with you to determine really what the go-to package is, and then build packages around those, one that's lower and one that's higher. And the customer will then look at the menu and then realize for themselves that that middle package is actually the best value and it's the one that they want to do, when in reality, that's what the menu told them to do. So that's a way to use decoy dishes within the catering world that works really well.
Yeah. The last one is brand consistency.
Your favorite.
The design of the menu should be used to reinforce the style of the restaurant and strengthen the brand as a whole. So if someone was handed your menu that has never been to your restaurant before, they should be able to determine the vibe, the type of cuisine, the maybe the price point, without even having to have gone there, but just by the style and layout of the menu that they're given. So a couple examples here. This restaurant, we didn't, the logo is not even on this graphic, this happy hour graphic, but you know, it translates the style and the overall vibe of their brand. You know, you can tell by the color usage, the types of fonts used, even the style and the little, taking the graphic element from the logo and incorporating it into the title of the graphic. You know, different techniques that you can use just to really reinforce and drive your brand home, and build trust with the customer. Well, other examples, this is a cocktail menu, you know, using same techniques, fonts, elements from the logo, again, really just strengthening this brand. And then finally this, you know, taking the graphic element out of the logo and adding it as a watermark in the background, using fonts that complement the logo, a similar style. You can just, you know, you can look at this and then immediately kind of understand the type of experience you're going to have when you go in and dine there or take out.
Yeah, I think this is the fun part.
Mm-hmm.
And most designers that are not really familiar with best practices for restaurant menus will skip the other 9 steps and they'll go right to this one. And they'll start with the brand and the visuals and the colors. And you need to have brand consistency, but you need to do it within the context of the other rules. And that's really the trick of it, because if it's brand first and you don't have the framework and the infrastructure, it can just look like a cool like flyer that doesn't really do its job.
Right.
So that's how we put this one last, because now that the other pieces of the puzzle are put together, now you can go crazy with brand consistency, but within the constraints of the other 9 rules.
Right.
So that's how you kind of find the happy medium of a cool branded fun design that doesn't like get away from itself.
Right. Yeah, we're our goal is to enhance the user experience when it comes to navigating through a menu. And the most important thing is really the hierarchy of information that you're trying to present. And if that's not clear, then then it doesn't matter how well the design, how good the design really like goes with your brand. It's not doing the job that it's intended, which is to sell the items that you want to sell in your restaurant, and really showcase what you're all about and all the hard work that you put into crafting the dishes and the cocktails and the items that you're selling.
Yeah, and the logo is a perfect example. That is the brand. Like that is everything, but it's not informative. It's not a menu. So like that's an example of like beautifully designed on brand, but like not helping me understand what I should order.
Right.
And then the other side of the spectrum is like a Word document, in black ink that's just listed that looks like it was made by a teenager. So in the middle is somewhere you want to live. Elements of the brand and also structurally sound. And that is what makes a great menu that's branded.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to menu design, it's an investment, and it might seem a lot. It might not seem like an important, piece of marketing material that the restaurant should spend money on. But in the long run, you invest in it in the beginning with professionals that have experience in menu design specifically, and you'll reap the rewards down the line. People will start ordering those things that you want them to order more and more, and you'll see that money tenfold.
Yeah. And like another way to put it is you're not going to have a contractor build a building without first having the blueprint from the architect.
Right.
So get the blueprint down, make sure it's structurally sound, and then have your contractor build it to specification.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Anything else?
That's it.
That's it. 10 pillars.
10 pillars. Till next time.
Until next time.